I'd like to introduce Brian Garawirrtja. Brian is a ceremonial leader from the Birkili Gupapoingal clan. He's a musician in the early Arnhem Land popular band, Soft Sands, and his visual art is displayed in the Australian National Maritime Museum. Brian has long been engaged in culture, language and heritage research and holds a Master of Indigenous Knowledges from Charles Darwin University. Brian's going to be joined today by Professor Aaron Corn, who many of you know. Professor Aaron Corn is inaugural director of the Indigenous Knowledge Institute at the University of Melbourne and has served for a long time as director of the National Recording Project for Indigenous Performance in Australia. They'll also be joined by Dr. Anthea Skinner, who's recently been awarded a Mackenzie Fellow at the University of Melbourne, and Anthea is a musicologist, archivist, and is working to develop adaptive music technologies and pedagogies for students with a disability. We also have some contributions from Marcia Langton, who was unable to join us today, but has provided some video. Marcia is Redmond Barry Distinguished Professor and Foundation Chair of Australian Indigenous Studies at the University of Melbourne, and also has a long-term association with Yolŋu people and the work of the National Recording Project for Indigenous Performance in Australia. So, over to you guys.
Thanks, Sam. Mori, markup medi, namadine. You're on mute. Unmute, please. Can we get Brian unmuted, please? Fantastic. Namadini Mori.
Mainmak kato.
Mainmak.
Mainmak Mitri. Very good.
Anthea, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. You look very relaxed.
Thank you, as always.
Okay.
On a comfy chair, couch.
Well, look, this is a discussion that started at the Indigenous Knowledge Institute's first symposium this year, which was for the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. And we're continuing a discussion that happened there, because every time we talk about this topic, we really only have time to look at a tiny, tiny sliver of what Brian and Renelle, his wife, know. And you know, I feel that this is a conversation that, like all such conversations in this group, will go for a very long time. So thank you for joining us, Maury, and thanks for introducing us, Sam, and thanks for Anthea. We have a slideshow, which I hope we can mix with some talking heads. So I'll try and get that up in share and project. So please let me know if we're seeing this, because I can't really see both at once. Yep, I can see that. So Brian is here on screen. Renelle is there in the background and is a contributor to this ongoing project. It's important to say that Marcia's work with Yolŋu exchanges in Northeast Arnhem Land with Southeast Asian traders from Makassar and elsewhere extends from 1996. She's been working on this project from 1996 onwards and provides a lot of the foundation for our work in this space. And one of the videos that we're going to play from the Garma Festival 2005, it's also important to mention, was an outcome of a project that we did with Brian when I worked with Alan Marrett at the University of Sydney, and we found some internal funding to bring Makassar musicians and dancers to the Garma Festival that year, where Yolŋu collaborated with them in performances, and then afterwards at the Darwin Festival. We have Anthea Skinner, who is a very important scholar in a number of intersecting fields, but in this capacity is speaking from the basis of her knowledge of the Malay world. And I've introduced myself previously, so on we go. Oh, Renelle, Ngandi, Namari. Yo, like you. So just to locate everybody, we're talking about the Yolŋu cultural block, which is the pink shaded area in the northeast of Arnhem Land. It's massive and expansive. There are at least 60 clans, depending on how you define a clan and clan groupings in that part of the country. And a lot of the song and dance traditions for a lot of clans, you know, are still really only known about by their traditional owners. I'm very fortunate because through my long work with the Gulbapoingal Clan Alliance, which Brian is a senior leader from, since the mid 1990s, I've had a very long engagement with Gulbapoingal music and dance and culture and law and other such things. But today we decided through conversation about these sessions that we'd talk about a very specific place, a very important place for the Birkali clan within the Gulbapoingal Alliance, and that is the Wangangaraka, the root homeland, the foundation homeland called Luŋgutja. And Luŋgutja is a tiny island, two tiny islands in the west of Arnhem Bay and the adjacent peninsula on the mainland. And that is Luŋgutja.
Yeah.
I can remember when you told me back in 2005 that I had to hire a charter plane and we had to go up and take these photos.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time anybody had ever asked me to hire a plane for anything.
Mm.
And I'm really glad you did it. So there's deep Darwul, there's deep narratives about Luŋgutja. And again, we will only scratch the surface today. Every time we talk, we take a tiny slice and talk about it in great depth. So today, by no stretch of the imagination, is the whole story. It's just a tiny window into it. Now, we didn't really have time to rehearse this because of the vagaries of Zoom connectivities. Do you want to read that, Maury, or shall I read it and you respond?
More is the water that surrounds the Gulbapoingal homeland of Luŋgutja on western coast of Arnhem Bay. As the tide comes in, Moro creates life and all the Gulbapoingal holds.
Now, if we could have the audio clip that's labeled Brian 1, please, we should hear the right song to start us for Mungoro, the waters that give life to Luŋgutja.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
No, I was just, I thought there was that was Hindi Bilma.
Mm.
I thought the next one was supposed to be Yoto Bilma.
Mm.
Yeah.
We have those recordings, but limited time.
That's right.
These were recordings that Brian directed and sung as lead singer, and I produced back in 2005. And we went to not just Luŋgutja, but significant Gupapungo sites to record them. I think, oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Sorry. I don't know how you got onto mute again. I might read this one just while Brian's on mute. So Gunbilk is yeah. Do you want to read that one? Go for it.
Gunbilk is the class you see when
We're muted again.
Yeah, we're muted again.
Aaron,
I'm
you
not
might want to
sure
read
how
it out.
that's happening. I'll read it out. So Gunbilk is the calm, glassy sea when the whole of Munguru is calm, and it's used as a lullaby. It cradles newborn babies of Gupapungo mothers. In fact, there's a dance move that is like cradling a baby.
yeah.
Yeah. And Gunbilk is a representation of the peace and harmony that's possible between all people when everything is calm. And that's related to something that Brian told me on the beach at Nikawal many years ago, that when Munguru is calm and glassy, that allows the coral spores from beneath the water's surface to be released into the air, and it makes people drowsy as they sit on the shore, and it sends babies to sleep.
As well as Noe, when someone just passed away, yeah, becomes a deceased, yeah, he rests in peace, and you rest in peace.
So it has a funeral connotation as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Markup.
Yeah.
And when the sea is calm like that, in that state, Berkeley hunters get in their leaper, their canoes, and paddle out to search for the turtle malaraka, which is a, I think, a species of loggerhead turtle.
Yeah.
Return with the turtle ashore. And you told me something about the other night that you can literally see the turtles resting on the bottom through the calm glassy sea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can literally look out across the horizon and the sea is so much like glass that you can see the turtles resting on the bottom.
Yeah.
Go out and get them.
Yeah.
So that's a painting of the daughter. Who's this?
Edwin and my daughter who did painting of Malarka, surrounded in that, while the two rainbow serpents are there and they're resting around the two rainbow serpents.
Mm.
Yeah. And they're the diamond shaped turtle. Malarka.
Did you want to say something about the shape of the turtle shell?
They like to us, we call them like a 50 cents or a treasure. So it's that's our treasure, Birkalu.
And they actually have great value, those shells, because through trade up into Asia, they became very important trade items. They were actually valuable as trade items as well, but we'll get to that later. But that's a beautiful painting, isn't it?
And around there's one opening, the triangle, the one opening, the horizon now. Laparal, sitting on the horizon.
Yeah, clouds on the horizon. Yeah, triangles on the outside representing the Gapalal or the Wangapini cloud.
Cloud, yeah.
So associated with this place is Jadi Jadi, a blue flag that when it strikes the ground and is embedded into the earth is used to mark Luŋgutja as a Gupapoingal Berkeley homeland. And that's why everything we're doing here today is blue. And that's often why whenever we appear in public together, we're wearing blue, if you ever wonder. And when that happens, when the flag is planted into the ground, the Berkeley stand firm, which is a song we're about to play, and they call out sacred names that declare their eternal ancestry in Luŋgutja. They call out the names of Munguru, the water. They call out the names of Malarka, the turtle. They call out the names of the turtle's breath that creates the Wangapini cloud formation. Can also appear in a big anvil shape, like two arms outstretched. So there's a song next. So now's a good time to say something, or do you want to hear the song and say something after the song?
I'd say all those you read is according to the Manichae.
Everything is
according to the song and the chorus are all contained in that ceremony.
That is correct, because the text we're using is actually from a show that we directed at Brian's end and produced at my end, I think for the Darwin Festival in 2005. And a lot of the text you're seeing is a script from that, which follows a small portion of the Manichae, the public ceremonial song series that Brian knows. Again, it's a very small fragment of a much bigger series. and Brian knows multiple series from multiple places, and actually knows multiple series and multiple different song genres as well. So again, a tiny fragment.
Yeah.
So this would be the audio titled Brian 2, and this is the Gondarra, the standing firm, standing strong as the flag is planted into the ground. Okay, I think we need Brian unmuted again, please. Oh, no. Okay.
Yo, those song was a region standing firm and also claiming and declaring the ground, declaring with the Dalkara that is, as you heard, the other part was songs, and the other person was calling out names and declaring the names of the pole itself and the people that is standing firm and owning the ground. Like when you stand and sort of, you put your foot inside now, the sand inside, now you rub with your foot and declaring and stamping at the same time. Yeah. And the flag you see there is bamboo. Bamboo, the flag. Yeah.
Bamboo is a song subject too, isn't it?
Yeah, bamboo, bolo.
Yeah, bolo, it floats.
Yeah, floats, yeah.
Mm.
And Birkeluja flag is already always a bolo, flag. Yeah.
And also, if you look at the dancers' designs on their chest, they're the same triangles, the clouds on the horizon.
Yeah, cloud horizon, flag.
And those two lines again, two snakes that were in the painting before.
They like the snake and what do you call when the lightning.
The lightning.
Yeah.
The lightning from the rainbow snake.
From the rainbow snake.
So all of this is leading up to the blue flag doesn't just mark the ownership and the belongingness of Gupapunga Birkali to Luŋgutja, it also proclaims that place as a port.
Yeah.
And the willingness, the intent of the Birkali to trade with foreign visitors from across the seas to the north of the Australian coastline.
Yeah.
And that brings in a whole different area of conversation, which in our last panel discussion together back in August, we did explore with you, Maury, at great length. But this time around, we wanted to bring in a different perspective from somebody who knows about the Malay world and things and sea trade, and that person is Anthea Skinner. But it is indeed sung and remembered and known that Birkali and other Yolŋu clans met with Macassan visitors from 1750s onwards until the early 20th century, who sailed from Sulawesi on the beach at Luŋgutja. And there was trading for local rights to collect sea cucumber, trepang, beche de mer, tarepa, which is all different names for the same thing, sea slug, from local Yolŋu waters in return for all the imported goods that Macassans brought, like tobacco, rice, alcohol, cloth, metals, things like knives, playing cards, and a lot of other goods. So did you want to talk about that before we move forward and introduce the video and Anthea?
I think you just covered.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm also keeping in mind that we're on a timeline as well, and we don't want to go really over time. So if we could now play the video, please. This is Brian and other Yolŋu people, including some you might recognize like Witiana Marika, dancing to welcome Macassan visitors from an ensemble called Takping Siwalia that Alan Marrett and I were able to fund out of the University of Sydney to bring to the Gama Festival that year. So let's see if It was a good day, wasn't it?
It was.
It was really good.
That was really good.
Yeah.
But I can't do that dance anymore.
No, we're all shockingly older than we were then.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going because I'm not even looking at the time. I'm relying on Sam to tell us when we have little time left. But let's just keep going and get through it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Anthea, over to you. You let me know when you want the next slide. And
Sure.
so again, you can watch our previous video and see Brian talking about these slides, but this is Anthea's take on it from a Malay world perspective.
No.
Okay. Yep. I guess I wanted to start by saying that while I am ethnically Malay, I am not from Makassar. That's not my area. But my grandfather, who was a scholar of classical Malay, which was the lingua franca in the region, wrote the English translation for one of the first Macassan court texts to be written in classical Malay. So that's where my interest started. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is who are we talking about when we say Macassans? And you can see it's labelled there at the bottom of South Sulawesi there. But it's important to note that Makassar is a Malay word, not a Macassan word. And so it's a word we use to describe speakers of the Macassarese language group who live in that area. But the people we're talking about would have thought of themselves as residents of the twin kingdoms of Goa and Telok, with Goa being the larger of the two kingdoms. They were considered locally as one people with two leaders. Goa was the larger of the two kingdoms, and so much of the trade was auspiced by them. But I guess one of the things I really wanted to talk about today was why the Macassans went all of that way. You can see it's not a short trip, and you can see from the sort of arrows of the trade winds that actually sort of says it takes a year to go there because of the way the trade winds work. You have to stay for 6 months once you're there because you can't get back. So this is not an easy journey to make by any means. And as a result, trepang fishing was not a traditional trade item of the Macassans. They were originally spice traders, and they dominated the whole spice trade in the region, which, as we know, trading through Malacca and into Europe was worth a fortune. When the Dutch arrived in the mid-17th century, they basically, after a long series of wars with the Macassans were very strong and powerful. They fought hard. The Dutch eventually took over the spice trade, and that left the Macassans essentially looking for new places and people to trade with. So what did they do? They turned north. They looked to China, and they could no longer go to Malacca and Batavia because the Dutch were sort of controlling that. So they looked north to China, and instead of trading spices, they traded birds' nests and shark fin, which they got mostly from the coast of Borneo, and trepang, which they also got from Borneo and from Australia. So that's really how the Macassans ended up there. So that's why we start to see them arriving in large numbers in the sort of late 17th century. Here's what they're arriving in. These are their prows. And I guess one of the things I kind of wanted to point out here is this is a lovely picture, and it's, there's two little boats here. This is not how they would have arrived. It was not two boats. It was a massive fleet, possibly hundreds of boats with thousands of people who, because of the trade winds, arrived and stayed for 6 months. So there's a really big logistical issue about having that many people arrive on your shore. And the Macassans, historically were very powerful. So, for example, when the people on the island of Bima decided in the early 1600s to break their vassal state relationship with Macassar and trade instead with the Dutch, the Macassans descended on their port with 400 war vessels. That's a big fleet, And so I guess I just kind of wanted to point out that this was mass production on a mass scale, especially at the time. This was not a few little fishermen arriving on the coast. This was a lot of people. Should we move on to the next slide?
And a massive cultural impact, as we'll see, on the
Exactly.
peoples of the North Coast. And I think when Matthew Flinders encountered a fleet, I forget the date, 18 something, late 1800s, it was 60 boats and 1,000 crew. That's the size of it. But anyway, moving on.
So even today, you know, that many people arriving suddenly on the shores of Arnhem Land, it's, you know, that would be a massive deal. You know, it's huge. Here is a very attractive photo of the trepang, which is what they were harvesting. And I guess the main thing I wanted to point out about this is that this is not a product that Macassans actually used. As we said, this was a Chinese product. They were only really farming it or harvesting it to supply the Chinese for Chinese medicine. So this was not a local delicacy by any means. Next one. Okay, so this is a list of a lot of the kind of words that have been sort of loan words from various languages in the Malay world. We have
The Yolŋu languages, yeah.
This is in Yolŋu language. So the musicians in the room might be familiar with, in the sort of second dot point, suling, it would be in Indonesian, flute. So some of those are, you know, current Indonesian or at that point Malay words. We also have Makassarese and Bugis words, the Bugis being the other people who lived nearby in South Sulawesi. The one that really interests me, though, there is lipa, the canoe. Because that, I think, points towards an even earlier phase of contact. That's a Sama Bajau word, and I think it's also used by some of the other sea people around Borneo. So to me, that looks, I suspect that would probably actually predate Macassan contact. There's, you know, Macassans weren't the first to arrive, which isn't surprising given the numbers they arrived in, you know, it's...
And Nganachi, which is a Yolŋu word used for alcohol today, is a Yolŋuization of arak.
Which again is well known throughout the Malay world as a rice wine.
And damburu, drum.
Drum, yep.
Oh, and of course, the Yolŋu money, the Yolŋu word for money is
Rupiah.
Rupiah. Yeah. And the Yolŋu word for non-Yolŋu, for white people generically?
Oh, balanda.
Balanda, which is the Malay word for Dutch.
Or a Hollander.
Hollander, yes, exactly. That's where it comes from. Hollander. Yeah, that's what it was originally. So English Hollander, Malay Indonesian Balanda, and then Yolŋu Balanda.
And there's another very important loan word that we discussed at great length about discussing, which is this one, Anthea.
Walata. Yeah. So Macassans that arrived, they were Islamic, part of a wide range group of Islamic states in Malaysia. And on their ships, they had imams. Every ship had an imam who would lead the call to prayer, which would have been heard from the beach. But also the imams were not just there as religious leaders, they were also there as sort of lawyers, peacekeepers, I guess. When there were disputes, they would come in and make sure people were treated equally and fairly. So if individuals in the fleet transgressed against local law, which in a fleet that size is probably bound to happen at some point, it would have been the imams probably who would have come in and helped to negotiate how to deal with that. So the imams would have been an important part but not just in the religious activities on the ship, but also in the negotiating with people on the land and people whose waters they were in. Did you want to say more about that, Brian?
Yes, you're right there. They were like peacekeepers, landlords, and they looks after our nature as well. Make sure nobody does harm to the land or to break branches or dig hole or do like man-made thing, you know, no, like they have to be look after and be peaceful to the and harmony to the land, holy land. No? So yeah, like Walata and Urate like my ancestor, same as like Walata. Look after my area. If I do wrong thing, I get punished or I get told by my old people. These are the laws of this Walata or Uratelako. You can't do this and that. You can do this, but you can't do that. You can get a fish, just a little bit of fish, but after that you don't throw the bones. Like you have to make a one hole to contain them there. So that next time you come for that hunting, you'd still get more feed by the land and sea. Yeah. These are the laws for Walata and Uratelaku. You don't get a lot of fish and then throw bones everywhere, you know? No, you can't. Our custom is to contain in one hole. Or keep it even for Doa Moyote and for Yirija Moyote, they have the same sort of common protocols or law, you know. Yeah.
So something. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
So something's just occurred to me that I should have worked out years ago. So the imams on these vessels were the important intermediaries who went to the Yolŋu leaders and said, well, we actually do have law and we will respect your law and we will be the go-betweens to make sure that, you know, we can actually get along.
Yes.
Okay, I should have worked that out years ago. I apologize. And of course, with about 150 years of continuous contact, Yolŋu certainly knew that these so-called Macassan visitors had a god and a set of laws that they themselves recognized, which comes across linguistically into Yolŋu Mata as Walata. Very interesting, thank you. Shall we keep going? There are a few more slides left.
Yes.
Anthea, again, we've explained this at length previously, but your take on this, Anthea.
On the flag system, look, I don't have a massive amount to say, except that Macassans used flags in very similar ways, both ceremonially and also as this marker for ports, so that people coming in ships could easily see where they were and weren't allowed to go. So there was a sort of a regional flag language, I guess, that sailors understood.
And you were telling me last night that flags are as sacred in that world, in their world.
Yes.
As, like potentially more sacred in their world than they are to, you know, in the Yolŋu world. They're at least of equal sacredness, and they're considered to be very sacred.
And there are specific flags that are, you know, representative of the king. Not just like you draw the flag, but the actual physical flag. You know, you can't make a copy of it. It's the king's flag.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah. So yes, they're very sacred. Yeah.
But without going through it in detail, because we have a previous video about that, these are the flag colours that were used to mark the ports of Yiddichimwadi Yolŋu clans, where Macassans were allowed to land and trade, and they were established ports, and the regular visitors in those Macassan fleets knew where they were and knew where they were meant to go. You'll notice that the bottom one actually isn't a Yolŋu clan. It's a group of Austronesian whalers known to the Yolŋu, it's an exonym, as the Woimu or the Bapayili, who visited the Yolŋu way back, and we're not even sure how long back that was. But the general story is that they were like the Yolŋu, and therefore adopted into the flag system. But that's something probably to explore at greater length down the track, and probably deserves its own video. This brings you back in, Maury. So there were places where the Macassan commercial fishermen were meant to go, and they were marked by flags. And then there were places that they weren't meant to go.
Yeah.
So what happened when they went to places, particularly at Luŋgutja, where they went where they weren't meant to go?
The Luŋgutja was forbidden.
The island
was forbidden. So it's only Uratelaku, the Mokoi, Uramokoi lady looks after the Navi. But if you remember that we ported at Yalakun, which is the other side,
the west
other side, mainland, a place called Yalakun. That's where the flag was ported, and that represented Luŋgutja. Yeah.
So these two snakes in this painting by Brian, which is in the National Maritime Museum collection.
Mundukul.
Yeah, Mundukul or water python, very sacred for Berkeley and Gulbenkian. These are also the two sandbars. There are two sandbars that exist between the island and the mainland peninsula, and it's completely prohibited. You just cannot go there. It's too sacred. And there was a Macassan vessel captained by a captain called Baba Jambang, or Father Tamarind, if you like. And when he put his anchor there, when he tried to get it out,
the whole prow went down the but the Mundukul had it all. And ate all the passenger. And one of them was the lady, and after when one of the Mundukul ate the lady woman, and it spread it out to the Luŋgutja beach, and there's he turned it into a another tree.
The cycad
palm tree. Grow on the beach, which is suspicious. We don't usually have ngatu grow in the beach, but that was specifically grown there because the Mundukul spread it, and the palm just shoot out and became a cycle palm tree in the beach. Usually it's grow in the bush, but that special tree is on the sand, on the soft sand, on the beach grow. If we would have had time to go there, you would have taken the photo of the palm tree grow in the beach.
I think that we don't have time to explore Wuratiti or Wuramukoi further today, but I think that next time we talk in a panel, we could explore her more, if you like, because she in herself has a lot of fascinating stories that extend and flesh out this story and change further in ways we don't have time for today. But to summarize, they anchored in the wrong place, this Macassan boat. They couldn't pull their anchor up, the rocks kept it. And then Mundukul, the rainbow serpent, water python, rears up out of the water as a storm, I'm imagining, and then eats the whole boat. And the only soul that is saved from that process is the one of the young girl on the boat, who becomes an important Kupapongo Birkali ancestral figure, Wuratiti, who's related to the cycad palms that Brian mentioned, which are very, very sacred, and normally would grow in forest groves. They would normally never grow on a beach side, as Brian said. So it's unusual that they would be there.
No, it's unusual.
We're coming close to our time.
Okay, we have a closing song.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
One closing song. So if you could play audio 3, please. Brian specifically requested that we play out with this to close the ceremony.
Well, thank you, Brian, Aaron, Anthea, and Renelle. It's been a stimulating discussion to listen in on.